The morning sun rose over New Terra like it had for the past 50 years, since humans first settled the colony. Emma Chen ran through the golden wheat fields, her dark hair flowing behind her as she laughed. At 8 years old, she knew every corner of the agricultural settlement that 3,000 humans called home. Her parents worked in the main settlement, managing trade routes with the nearby alien systems. Life was simple here. Life was good. Emma stopped running when something caught her eye. Half buried in the soft earth near the irrigation channel, a strange object glinted in the sunlight. She knelt down and began digging with her small hands. The object was smooth, metallic, and covered in symbols she had never seen before. It was beautiful. She pulled it free and turned it over in her hands, wondering what it could be. The colony existed on the edge of known space, far from Earth but close enough to several alien trade routes. The humans of New Terra had always been careful to maintain good relationships with their neighbors. They traded grain, technology, and medical supplies. In return, they received materials they could not produce themselves. It was a peaceful existence, and the colonists preferred it that way. Emma took her discovery back to the settlement. Her father examined it carefully in their small home. "This looks old," he said, turning the artifact over. "Very old. We should report this to the colonial administrator." Emma nodded eagerly. She had found something important. She felt proud. The next day, 3 ships appeared in New Terra's sky. They were not the usual trading vessels. These ships were military craft, bearing the symbols of the Zaltharian Empire. The Zaltharians were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most powerful species. Their empire stretched across hundreds of systems. They were not known for their kindness. The ships landed near the main settlement. 50 Zaltharian soldiers emerged, led by a commander whose armor gleamed with medals and rank insignia. The Zaltharians were tall, with gray skin and sharp features. Their eyes were cold. The colonial administrator, Marcus Webb, went to greet them with proper diplomatic protocol. "Welcome to New Terra," Marcus said, bowing slightly as custom dictated. "We were not expecting Imperial visitors. How may we assist you?" The Zaltharian commander did not return the courtesy. "You have discovered an artifact. It belongs to the Zaltharian Empire. You will surrender it immediately." Marcus hesitated. "With respect, Commander, the artifact was found on human territory. Under galactic law, such discoveries belong to the inhabitants of the world where they are found. However, we would be happy to negotiate a fair arrangement for study or—" "You dare speak of law to me?" The commander's voice was sharp. "The Empire claims all ancient artifacts in this sector. You are a minor species. You will comply." The conversation grew heated. Marcus tried to maintain diplomacy, but the Zaltharians were not interested in compromise. They demanded immediate surrender of the artifact. When Marcus explained that such matters required consultation with Earth authorities, the commander's patience ended. "You test our patience, human. We have crushed civilizations far greater than yours. You will learn your place." The commander ordered his soldiers to search the colony. They moved through homes and buildings, frightening families and destroying property in their search. Finally, they found the artifact in the administrative building, where it had been secured for study. The commander held it up triumphantly. "This is Imperial property. Your refusal to cooperate has consequences." Marcus stepped forward. "Commander, please. We meant no disrespect. Take the artifact." "We do not want conflict." The commander turned to face him. Something dark moved behind his eyes. "Consequences must be demonstrated. Lesser species must remember their place in the galactic order." He ordered his soldiers to gather every colonist in the main square. 3,000 humans were herded together, confused and frightened. Children clung to their parents. Emma stood with her mother and father, not understanding what was happening. Her father held her hand tightly. The Zaltharian commander walked through the crowd until he found Emma. He looked down at her, then at the frightened humans around her. "This child found the artifact. This child represents your species' theft of Imperial property." Emma's father stepped forward. "Please, she's just a child." She didn't know. 2 soldiers grabbed him and forced him to his knees. Emma's mother screamed. The commander drew his weapon, a sleek energy pistol that hummed with power. He pointed it at Emma. "Let all lesser species learn this lesson. The Zaltharian Empire is not to be defied." Time seemed to stop. Marcus shouted something. Emma's mother lunged forward. Her father struggled against the soldiers holding him. But the commander had already made his decision. The weapon fired. The sound was not loud. It was almost quiet. Emma fell. The silence that followed was absolute. 3,000 humans stood frozen in shock and horror. Emma's mother collapsed beside her daughter's body, her screams tearing through the air. Her father broke free from the soldiers and crawled to his family sobbing. The Zaltharian commander holstered his weapon. "The matter is settled. Let this be a reminder of Imperial authority. Interfere with us again and the consequences will be far worse." The Zaltharian soldiers returned to their ships. The engines roared. Within minutes they were gone, leaving the colony in devastated silence. The artifact went with them. Emma remained behind, lying in her mother's arms in the center of the square. The colonists stood motionless for a long time. Then slowly they began to move. Someone activated the emergency beacon that connected to Earth and other human colonies. The message was simple and terrible. They sent the security footage from the square. They sent Emma's name, her age, and what had been done to her. Marcus sat in his office as the messages went out across human space. His hands shook. In 50 years of colonial administration, he had never imagined anything like this. The Zaltharians had committed an act of unthinkable cruelty. They had murdered a child to make a point about power. As night fell over New Terra, the colony mourned. Emma's parents held vigil over their daughter. The other families gathered around them in silent support. No one knew what would happen next. They only knew that something fundamental had broken. The Zaltharians had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. High above the planet, the emergency beacon continued its broadcast. The message traveled through relay stations and quantum communicators. It moved faster than light itself, carrying news of what had happened on New Terra. It reached colony after colony. It reached the inner worlds. Finally, it reached Earth itself, and Earth received the message. The message from New Terra reached Earth 36 hours after Emma's death. It arrived at the Terran Assembly Building in Geneva at 3 in the morning local time. The night staff received it first. When they watched the security footage, they immediately woke the Secretary General. Within 2 hours, every member of the Terran Assembly had seen what happened on New Terra. Within 4 hours, the footage had spread to every human colony in space. By morning, 5 billion humans on Earth had watched an 8-year-old girl murdered by an alien commander for finding an artifact in a field. The reaction was unlike anything in human history. There were no riots. There was no chaos. Instead, a cold, unified fury settled over humanity like frost. People went to work. They cared for their families. They went about their daily lives. But something had changed in every human heart. Something ancient and terrible had awakened. On the Galactic Council station orbiting the neutral world of Axis Prime, ambassadors from 40 species gathered for their regular session. The human ambassador, Sarah Chen, Emma's aunt, requested emergency speaking time. The other ambassadors agreed, though many looked uncomfortable. They had heard about the incident on New Terra. "Honorable representatives," Sarah began, her voice steady despite her grief. 3 days ago, the Zaltharian Empire committed an act of murder against a human child. We have shared the evidence with all of your governments. We now make a formal request for the Galactic Council to condemn this action and demand justice. The Zaltharian ambassador, a proud creature named Vexthor, stood immediately. The Empire acted within its rights. The humans of New Terra interfered with Imperial property. An example was necessary to maintain order in that sector. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. The Council had always been dominated by powerful species like the Zaltharians. Smaller species had learned to accept the rules set by their stronger neighbors. The murder of one human child, while unfortunate, was not unusual in galactic politics. Powerful species did such things regularly. The ambassador from the Keltor Confederacy spoke next. Perhaps the response was excessive, but the Zaltharians did warn the colony. Surely some diplomatic solution can be reached. A fine, perhaps. An apology. Sarah looked at each ambassador in turn. Her face showed no emotion. A fine, an apology. For the murder of a child, she paused. Very well. Humanity notes the Council's position. She left the chamber without another word. The ambassadors looked at each other, relieved that the matter seemed concluded. Only the ambassador from the Vren Republic, a small species that had suffered under Zaltharian aggression before, looked worried. "I think we have made a terrible mistake," she whispered to her aide. On Earth, the Terran Assembly convened in its full form for the first time in 2 centuries. The assembly chamber was enormous, carved from a mountain in Switzerland. It had been built 500 years ago but had rarely needed to be used. Most human decisions were made in smaller councils or through digital democracy. The full assembly only gathered in moments of absolute crisis. 500 representatives entered the chamber. Each one represented a major human population center, either on Earth or in the colonies. They had one decision to make. The vote was simple. On the massive display screen, a single question appeared in every human language. Invoke Protocol Nightfall? The vote was unanimous. 500 votes in favor, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Protocol. Nightfall had been created 400 years earlier, shortly after humanity had developed faster-than-light travel and encountered alien species for the first time. The protocol was simple. If any human child was deliberately killed by a non-human entity for political purposes, humanity would respond with overwhelming force. The protocol had never been invoked. Most humans had forgotten it existed, but the Terran military had not forgotten. In secret facilities across human space, in hidden shipyards inside asteroid belts and beneath the clouds of gas giants, in stations disguised as mining operations and research outposts, the military apparatus of humanity began to wake up. The human species had been peaceful for centuries. They had traded fairly with other species. They had avoided conflicts. They had seemed weak, perhaps even harmless. This was deliberate. Humanity had learned long ago that showing strength invited challenges. Better to appear weak while preparing for threats that might never come. But the preparations had been made nonetheless. While other species had fought and conquered, humans had built. While empires had risen and fallen, humans had researched and developed. While the galaxy had assumed humanity was a minor species with perhaps a few hundred warships, the truth was very different. 48 hours after the vote, the human ambassador to the Zaltharian Empire delivered a message to the Imperial Palace. The Emperor himself received her, amused that the humans thought they could make demands of him. "Your Majesty," the ambassador said, "the Terran Assembly demands the immediate surrender of Commander Vexnal and all members of the High Command who authorized or approved his actions on New Terra. They will face trial under human law for the murder of Emma Chen." The Emperor laughed. It was a harsh sound that echoed through the throne room. "You demand? You whose entire species controls perhaps 20 worlds? You dare make demands of an empire that spans 400 systems? We demand justice, Your Majesty. You have 48 hours to comply. Or what, little human? Will you send your small fleet against us? We have 50,000 warships. You would be destroyed in days." The Emperor leaned forward. "Tell your assembly that the Zaltharian Empire does not answer to lesser species. Commander Vexnal acted appropriately. He will be commended, not punished." The ambassador bowed. "Then you have chosen your path. We have chosen ours. You have 48 hours. She left the throne room. The Emperor immediately broadcast his refusal across the galaxy, making sure every species heard his defiance. He wanted everyone to know that the Zaltharians would not bow to human demands. His message was clear. Attempt to challenge the Empire and you would be crushed. In the council chambers, ambassadors from dozens of species watched the Emperor's broadcast. Many nodded in approval. This was how power worked in the galaxy. The strong did as they wished. The weak submitted or were destroyed. Humanity would learn this lesson, though it might cost them dearly. Only a few ambassadors seemed worried. The Vren ambassador contacted Sarah immediately. "Ambassador Chen, please reconsider. The Zaltharian fleet is enormous. Humanity cannot win this fight. Accept their refusal and seek other forms of justice." Sarah's response was brief. "Thank you for your concern. Please move all Vren vessels and stations at least 1 million kilometers from any Zaltharian military installation within the next 48 hours. Why would we?" The Vren ambassador stopped. "What are you going to do?" "We are going to ensure that this never happens again." Across human space, in hundreds of hidden locations, activation codes were transmitted. Ancient systems powered up. Shipyards that had been silent for decades roared to life. And in the darkness between stars, 500,000 sleeping giants began to wake. The 48-hour deadline expired at exactly midnight Earth Standard Time. For a few moments, nothing happened. On the Galactic Council Station, ambassadors waited nervously. On Zaltharia Prime, the Emperor slept peacefully, confident in his empire's power. Across the galaxy, Military sensors maintained their regular scans of space. Then every long-range sensor in known space went completely insane. The first reports came from the Keltor Confederacy. Their deep space monitoring stations detected massive power signatures appearing in previously empty regions of space. Hundreds of them, then thousands. The sensor operator on duty thought his equipment had malfunctioned. He ran diagnostics 3 times before accepting that the readings were real. The Zaltharian Imperial Fleet received similar reports. Admiral Krathovan was woken in his quarters aboard the flagship Dominion. "Sir, we're detecting unknown contacts appearing throughout the sector." "Multiple contacts. Very large contacts." The Admiral rushed to the bridge. The tactical display showed red markers appearing across a dozen systems simultaneously. Each marker represented a vessel of unknown origin. The computer was classifying them as capital ships based on their energy signatures. But the numbers made no sense. "How many contacts total?" The sensor officer's hands shook as she checked her console. "Admiral, we're now detecting contacts in 30 systems. Contact count is at 50,000 and climbing." "Sir, they're not appearing. They were already there. They're dropping stealth." Stealth systems were not unusual in galactic warfare. Most species had some form of sensor dampening technology, but no one had stealth good enough to hide an entire fleet. Certainly not a fleet this size. "Identity?" "Unknown, sir." "We're scanning now. Wait." The officer's face went pale. "Admiral, we're receiving transponder signals. They're human vessels." The Admiral stared at the display. "That's impossible. Humanity has no more than a few hundred ships. This must be a sensor ghost, a malfunction." The communications officer interrupted. "Admiral, we're being hailed. It's a human vessel. They're requesting we stand down and await instructions. Put them on screen." A human appeared on the main display. She wore a military uniform unlike anything the Zaltharians had seen. Her rank insignia showed 5 stars. "I am Fleet Admiral Catherine Zhang of the Terran Defense Force. You are Admiral Krathovan of the Zaltharian Imperial Fleet." "I am." "What is the meaning of this? Where did these ships come from?" "They've always been here, Admiral. You simply couldn't see them." Zhang's expression was cold. "Your Emperor refused our lawful demand for justice. We are now enforcing that demand. Stand down your fleet and await further instructions." The Admiral laughed. "You have revealed your hand too early, human. Even if you have managed to hide a few thousand ships, the Imperial fleet numbers 50,000. You cannot win." Zhang's expression did not change. "Admiral, we are currently tracking and targeting all 50,000 of your vessels. We know the location of every Zaltharian warship station and military installation in the Empire. We have had firing solutions on each of them for the past 6 hours. Impossible. No one could coordinate that many." The Admiral stopped as his sensor officer gasped. "Sir, contact count just updated. We're detecting 500,000 vessels." "Sir, that can't be right." 500,000? The Admiral felt his blood turn cold. 500,000 warships. It was inconceivable. No species in galactic history had ever assembled a fleet that large. The logistics alone would be impossible. "You're lying. This is some kind of trick, a hologram, Zhang cut him off. "No trick, Admiral. We simply prepared for a threat we hoped would never materialize. You have 12 hours to stand down. Any hostile action will be met with immediate response." The transmission ended. Across the Zaltharian Empire, similar conversations were happening on every military vessel and installation. Human ships had appeared everywhere simultaneously. They surrounded colonies, blockaded stations, and positioned themselves near every major Zaltharian world. On the Galactic Council Station, chaos erupted. Representatives from every species demanded explanations. The human ambassador stood before them all, her face calm. "Where did these ships come from?" The Keltor ambassador's voice shook. "We've monitored human space for decades. There were no shipyards, no military buildups." "How?" Sarah Chen answered quietly. "We built them in places you weren't looking. Inside asteroids. In deep space between systems. Beneath the clouds of gas giants. We've been building them for 400 years. 400 years? The Vren ambassador sounded awed. "But why? Why hide such power?" "Because we learned long ago that showing strength invites challenges. We wanted to be left in peace. We thought that if we appeared weak, others would leave us alone. We were wrong." Sarah's expression hardened. "The Zaltharians killed a child because they thought we couldn't respond. They were wrong too. The Zaltharian ambassador stood, his voice full of rage. "This is an act of war. You have surrounded our worlds, threatened our people." "We have done what you forced us to do," Sarah replied. "Your commander murdered Emma Chen. Your emperor refused to deliver justice. So we will take it ourselves. But unlike your species, we do not make war on the innocent. We are targeting your military forces only. Stand down, and no one else needs to die. You cannot hope to hold an empire of 400 systems with any occupation force, no matter how large. We don't want your empire. We want justice. Surrender the guilty parties, accept our terms, and we will leave. Refuse, and we will dismantle your military completely. The choice is yours." Throughout the galaxy, species that had dominated through military might suddenly face a terrifying reality. Humanity had been playing a different game all along. While others had conquered and expanded, humans had built and prepared. They had turned their entire civilization into a sleeping giant that could wake at a moment's notice. The human fleet was not just large. Each vessel was technologically superior to anything the galaxy had seen. They had better weapons, stronger shields, faster engines. Humanity had spent centuries advancing while pretending to be average. Now the truth was revealed in overwhelming force. Each dreadnought in the human fleet had a name, 500,000 names. The Zaltharians began researching these names and discovered something chilling. Every ship was named after a child from human history who had died unjustly. Children killed in wars, children murdered by oppressive governments, children who died in famines caused by greed, children lost to injustice of every kind. The flagship led the fleet toward Zaltharia Prime. Its name was displayed proudly on its hull for all to see, HNS Emma Chen. The ship was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that no Zaltharian scientist could fully understand. Its commander was Admiral Zhang herself. The emperor of the Zaltharian Empire sat in his throne room, watching the tactical displays. 500,000 ships, all human, all surrounding his empire like a closing fist. His admirals had been clear they could not win this fight. Every simulation showed the same result. Total defeat within days, possibly hours. For the first time in his long reign, the emperor felt fear. The humans had not made threats. They had not boasted. They had simply appeared with overwhelming force and made a simple demand: justice for a child. The countdown continued. 12 hours became 10. 10 became 8. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see if the Zaltharian Empire would bend or break. 8 hours before the deadline, the Zaltharian High Command gathered in the Imperial War Room. 23 generals and admirals stood before the Emperor, their expressions grim. The holographic display showed the human fleet in devastating detail. 500,000 dreadnoughts, each one a threat that could destroy a city. Together they could end the Zaltharian Empire in an afternoon. General Mortek spoke first. "Your Majesty, our analysts have completed their assessment. The human vessels are technologically superior in every measurable way. Their shields can withstand our heaviest weapons. Our shields cannot stop their lightest weapons. They have faster engines, better sensors, and coordination capabilities we cannot match. Then we build countermeasures," the Emperor said. "We adapt. Your Majesty, they have had 400 years to prepare for this moment. We have had days. There is no countermeasure possible in the time we have." Mortek looked defeated. "If we engage them, they will destroy us." "Not eventually, immediately." Admiral Krathvin added, "Our fleet is completely surrounded. They know the location of every vessel. If we power up weapons, they will interpret it as hostile action. They have told us they will respond instantly." The Emperor slammed his fist on the throne. "Then what do you suggest? That we surrender? That the mighty Zaltharian Empire bow to these inferior creatures?" "Your Majesty," another admiral said quietly, "they are not inferior. They never were. We simply believed they were because they chose not to reveal their strength. That was our mistake. I will not surrender." The Emperor stood, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I will not hand over Commander Vexnall to face human justice. I will not show weakness before the entire galaxy. Order all fleets to engage. We will show these humans the true power of the Empire." Several of the High Command members exchanged worried glances. General Mortek stepped forward. "Your Majesty, that order would result in the deaths of millions of our people. The humans have positioned their ships near all our major population centers. If we attack, they will retaliate and our civilians will suffer. Then they will die as martyrs for the Empire. The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury and fear. I will not be remembered as the Emperor who surrendered to a lesser species. The High Command had no choice but to obey. The orders went out to all Zaltharian vessels. Engage the human fleet. It was a death sentence and every officer knew it. But military discipline held. The Zaltharian fleet powered up weapons and prepared to fight. Admiral Zhang received the notification on the bridge of the HNS Emma Chen. All Zaltharian vessels are powering weapons, Admiral. They're preparing to engage. Zhang felt a deep sadness. They're choosing pride over the lives of their own people. Very well. Execute Defensive Protocol 7. Disable, do not destroy. Minimize casualties. Yes, Admiral. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The human fleet did not fire immediately. Instead, their point defense systems activated. These systems were designed to stop incoming missiles and projectiles. They were precise, computer-guided, and incredibly fast. When the Zaltharian fleet opened fire with everything they had, the human point defense system simply shot down every single incoming weapon. Thousands of missiles vanished in small explosions. Energy beams were intercepted by defensive fields that appeared precisely where needed. Kinetic projectiles were vaporized by laser grids. Not one human ship took damage. The Zaltharians had thrown everything they had at the human fleet, and it was as if they had thrown rocks at a mountain. Then the humans responded. They targeted engines and power systems only. Precision strikes that disabled rather than destroyed. Human weapons fired at the speed of light, hitting with perfect accuracy. Within 18 minutes, 10,000 Zaltharian warships were floating dead in space, their crews alive but their vessels completely powerless. The rest of the Zaltharian fleet ceased fire immediately. It was pointless to continue. The humans had proven they could destroy the Empire's military with ease. They had also proven they were choosing not to. Every disabled ship still had life support. Every crew was alive. The humans had been precise and merciful even in combat. Admiral Krathvin stared at his dead controls. His flagship was one of the disabled vessels. He had commanded the Imperial fleet for 20 years. He had won a dozen wars. But this was not war. This was something else entirely. The humans had swatted his fleet aside like insects, but they had been careful not to kill the insects. He received a transmission from Admiral Zhang. Admiral, your fleet is disabled but intact. Your crews are unharmed. Stand down and await further instructions. We have no choice, Krathvin replied. You have won. We didn't want to win, Admiral. We wanted justice. Now we will have it. On Zaltharia Prime, the Emperor watched his fleet die on the tactical displays. When the firing stopped and the reports came in, he could not believe it. 10,000 ships disabled in minutes. Not destroyed, disabled. The crews were alive. The humans could have killed everyone, but they had not. The throne room doors burst open. General Mortek entered with a company of Zaltharian Royal Guard. But the guards were not there to protect the Emperor. They were there to arrest him. What is the meaning of this? The Emperor demanded. Your Majesty, the High Command has voted unanimously to remove you from power. Your order to engage the human fleet was reckless and endangered the entire Empire. We are surrendering to human demands. You dare commit treason? We dare save our people, Your Majesty. You were willing to sacrifice them for pride. We will not allow it. The Emperor was taken into custody. Within the hour, the High Command contacted Admiral Zhang. They would surrender Commander Vexnal and all members of the previous High Command who had approved his actions. They would accept a human occupation force. They would agree to whatever terms humanity demanded. Zhang's response was measured. We don't want occupation. We want justice and assurance this will never happen again. 3 days later, a human special forces team landed on New Terra. Commander Vexnal had returned to the colony, believing he would be safe there. The humans had other plans. They extracted him in the middle of the night, along with 7 members of the High Command who had approved his actions on New Terra. The extraction was clean, professional, and completely overwhelming. Vexnal never had a chance to resist. Neither did his guards. The humans left no casualties. They simply took their targets and disappeared. The trial was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every species watched as humanity conducted a proper judicial proceeding. There were lawyers for the defense. There was evidence presented systematically. There were witnesses, including survivors from New Terra. Emma's parents testified about their daughter. The security footage was shown. Vexnal and the High Command members were given every opportunity to defend themselves. They could not. The evidence was overwhelming. The verdict was unanimous, guilty of murder. The sentence shocked the galaxy. Not death, life imprisonment. The humans built a prison specifically for the convicted Zaltharians. It was comfortable but secure. They would spend the rest of their lives there thinking about what they had done. The Emperor, for his role in refusing justice and ordering an attack that would have killed millions, was forced to abdicate. A new government was installed, overseen by human advisors. The Zaltharian Empire would undergo massive reforms. The reparations were equally surprising. The Zaltharians would fund schools, hospitals, and child welfare programs throughout the galaxy for the next century. Every species would benefit. The empire that had ruled through fear would now contribute to healing and growth. One human dreadnought remained in orbit over every major Zaltharian world. Not as conquerors, but as observers. They would stay there for 50 years, ensuring the reforms were implemented and the reparations were paid. The galaxy had changed forever in less than a week. Everyone understood now that humanity was not weak. They never had been. They had simply chosen peace while preparing for the possibility of war. Now that war had come, humanity had won decisively while still showing mercy. The question every species now asked was simple. What else had humanity been hiding? 3 years had passed since the day 500,000 human dreadnoughts had appeared and changed the galaxy forever. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the memorial on New Terra, looking at the simple stone marker that bore her niece's name. Emma Chen, beloved daughter, aged 8 years. The date of her death was carved below. Around the memorial, golden wheat grew in the fields where Emma had loved to run. The colony had grown. Where 3,000 humans once lived, there were now 10,000. New families had arrived, attracted by the peace and beauty of New Terra. The colony was no longer just a farming settlement. It had become something more symbolic. It was the place where humanity had decided enough was enough. Sarah was not alone at the memorial. With her stood Emma's parents, Marcus and Li Chen. They had aged in 3 years, their faces carrying the weight of their loss. But they had also found purpose. They were now ambassadors themselves, traveling the galaxy to speak about child welfare and protection. She would have been 11 today, Li said quietly, placing fresh flowers at the memorial. She wanted to be a botanist. She loved studying plants. She changed the galaxy, Sarah replied. Not because she wanted to, but because her death forced us to act. We should have acted sooner. We should have shown our strength earlier. Marcus shook his head. We chose peace for good reasons. We thought hiding our power would keep us safe. We were wrong, but our intentions were good. The truth had come out over the past 3 years. Humanity had explained to the galaxy why they had hidden their true capabilities. 400 years ago, when humans first developed faster-than-light travel, they had encountered a galaxy filled with species that competed through military might. The strong dominated the weak. Violence was common. Conquest was expected. Humanity had looked at this galaxy and made a choice. They would not become conquerors. They would not engage in the endless cycle of domination and revenge. Instead, they would appear weak while secretly becoming strong. They would trade and negotiate while building a military force so overwhelming that if they ever needed it, no one could stand against them. For centuries, the strategy had worked. Humanity grew wealthy through trade. They established colonies on peaceful worlds. They made friends among smaller species who appreciated their fair dealing. They seemed like a minor power, perhaps controlling 30 or 40 worlds with a small fleet that avoided conflicts. The truth was vastly different. Humanity controlled 300 worlds, many of them hidden or disguised as uninhabited. They had achieved post-scarcity economics 200 years ago. Fusion power, automated manufacturing, and advanced recycling meant that no human went hungry or homeless. With their basic needs met, humans had poured resources into science, education, and defense. The 500,000 dreadnoughts were just the visible part of humanity's military. There were tens of thousands of smaller vessels, orbital defense platforms around every human world, and weapon systems that most species could not begin to understand. Humanity had been preparing for a threat they hoped would never come. Emma's death had proven that the threat was real. Hiding had not protected humanity. It had only made them seem weak to species like the Zaltharians, who mistook restraint for inability. In the 3 years since, Humanity had not retreated back into hiding. The fleet remained active and visible. Human dreadnoughts patrolled trade routes, stopped piracy, and protected smaller species from aggression by larger ones. The galaxy had become a more peaceful place almost overnight, simply because humanity had decided to enforce that peace. The Zaltharian Empire had undergone massive changes. The old high command was gone, replaced by reformers who understood that the old ways had nearly destroyed their civilization. Slavery was abolished. Conquered species were given autonomy. Military forces were reduced and repurposed for defense rather than conquest. It had not been easy. Many Zaltharians resented humanity's interference, but the dreadnoughts in orbit over their worlds were a constant reminder that resistance was pointless. Gradually, as the reforms took hold and life improved for ordinary Zaltharians, the resentment faded. A new generation grew up knowing that might did not make right, and that cruelty had consequences. Other species had learned the lesson too. The Keltor Confederacy, which had dominated its region through military threats, suddenly found itself unable to intimidate its neighbors. When they attempted to invade a small species' homeworld, human ships appeared within hours. The Keltor fleet retreated without firing a shot. Child welfare laws had become universal. It was humanity's primary demand, backed by their overwhelming military force. Every species in the galaxy now had laws protecting children from abuse, exploitation, and violence. Violating these laws brought immediate human attention. No one wanted that. The Galactic Council had been restructured. It was no longer dominated by the largest military powers. Instead, representation was based on population and contribution to galactic welfare. Smaller species had equal voices. Decisions were made through consensus rather than might. Humanity had enforced fairness where before there had only been power dynamics. Sarah received a message on her communicator. She read it and smiled slightly. "They're arriving." A transport ship landed near the memorial. The doors opened and a group of children emerged. 20 of them, ranging in age from 6 to 14. They were Zaltharian children here on an exchange program. They would spend 6 months living with human families on New Terra, attending human schools and learning about human culture. The program had been controversial at first. Many humans had not wanted anything to do with Zaltharians, but Emma's parents had been the first to volunteer as host families. "Emma would have wanted us to build bridges," Lee had said. "She never hated anyone. We honor her memory by teaching others to be like her." The Zaltharian children approached the memorial nervously. Their teacher, a human named David Park, guided them forward. "This is Emma Chen," he said gently. She was 8 years old. She found an artifact in a field, and because of what happened to her, the entire galaxy changed. One of the Zaltharian children, a boy named Torvin, stepped forward. He placed a small toy at the memorial, something he had made himself in craft class. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry for what my people did." Lee knelt beside him. "You didn't do anything wrong. You weren't even born when it happened. But you can help make sure nothing like it ever happens again." "How?" "By being kind. By protecting those smaller than you. By remembering that having power means you have a responsibility to use it wisely." The children spent an hour at the memorial, learning about Emma and about the events that had followed her death. Then they returned to the settlement where their host families waited to welcome them. Sarah walked with Marcus through the wheat fields. In the distance, the HNS Emma Chen hung in orbit, a silent guardian 3 kilometers long. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Marcus asked. "Unleashing that kind of power on the galaxy?" "We gave them a choice," Sarah replied. "Justice or consequences. They chose consequences and we delivered them. But we also showed mercy. We could have destroyed the Zaltharian Empire. Instead, we reformed it. We could have conquered the galaxy. Instead, we're teaching it to be better. Some species are afraid of us now." "Good. Fear isn't always bad if it prevents cruelty. The Zaltharians weren't afraid of us before, and look what happened. Now everyone knows that humanity will protect the innocent. That's not a bad reputation to have." They reached the irrigation channel where Emma had found the artifact. The artifact itself was in a museum now, a simple piece of ancient technology that had triggered everything. Marcus looked at the spot where his daughter had knelt 3 years ago. "She just wanted to show me what she found," he said. She was so excited. She had no idea it would matter. "Nothing should have happened to her," Sarah said. "But because it did, millions of children across the galaxy are safer now. That doesn't make it fair." Doesn't make it right, but it gives her death meaning. High above them, aboard the HNS Emma Chen, Admiral Zhang stood on the bridge. Her ship had become the flagship of humanity's guardian fleet. She had named it herself, insisting that the child whose death had awakened humanity's power should be remembered in its greatest symbol. A young ensign approached her. "Admiral, we're receiving a report from the patrol near the former Keltor border. A species called the Drex were attempting to raid a colony. Our ships intervened. The Drex retreated without conflict." "Good. Make sure the colony receives reconstruction assistance if needed." "Admiral, if I may ask, how long will we need to maintain this presence? How long until the galaxy learns to police itself?" Zhang looked out at the stars. "Generations, probably. Maybe centuries. Power doesn't disappear just because we wish it would. Species that have ruled through force for thousands of years don't change overnight. We need to be here showing them a better way until that better way becomes normal. And if they never accept it, then we stay forever. The alternative is to let children die for political gain. I won't accept that alternative. None of us will." On New Terra, the day faded into evening. Emma's parents hosted a dinner for the Zaltharian exchange students and their families. Laughter echoed from their home. Children of two species who had been at war 3 years ago now played together in the yard. At the memorial, as darkness fell, soft lights activated automatically. They illuminated Emma's name so that anyone passing by could see it. The lights would burn all night, every night, forever. A reminder, a promise, a declaration that no child's death would ever again go unanswered. In orbit, 500,000 dreadnoughts maintained their vigil across the galaxy. Each one carried a child's name. Each one represented humanity's commitment to a simple principle: the innocent would be protected, and those who harmed them would face justice. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humanity was not weak. They never had been. They had simply chosen to be kind. But kindness backed by overwhelming force was very different from kindness born of weakness. The galaxy would remember Emma Chen, and they would remember what happened when humanity's kindness was met with cruelty. Above New Terra, the HNS Emma Chen adjusted its orbit slightly, its sensors scanning the system for threats that would never come. The ship and its namesake would watch over this world forever. It was a fitting memorial for a girl who had only wanted to show her father what she had found in a field. The galaxy was safer now, not perfect but better, and that was worth 500,000 dreadnoughts. That was worth revealing humanity's true strength. That was worth everything, because in the end, the safety of one child was worth any price, and humanity had decided that principle would govern the stars themselves.